I'm sure that it's been a while since we've done a real rezoning. We should probably swear in anybody who wants to talk and all that good stuff. Are you
Okay.
guys doing that, or you want me to say something?
Oh, you could run it, and then if we do something wrong, you can blame it on you.
We ready?
We're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Mario. Hold on a minute.
Call to order the September meeting of the Mexico Beach Planning and Zoning Board. As we've indicated before, this is an advisory board only, made up of Mexico Beach citizens who volunteer for the assignment. First of all, we can call the roll when you're ready.
Okay. Mr. Driver,
Here,
Mr. Hogan, Ms. Lindsay. Here. Mr. Kerrigan,
Here.
Mr. Masters, Mr. Bush,
Here.
Ms. Miller. Here.
Next thing on the agenda is the minutes of the August 3rd meeting. I've not had a chance to read them, so we'll either get them at the end of the meeting or the next meeting.
Okay.
I'll try to look at them while we're here. Third on the agenda is proposed townhome district zoning. And this sounds big and scary, but it's something we've been working on for several months, which I think is very positive for the city. And Mario, can you give us an overview of this townhome district zoning situation that we're in, and kind of let everybody know what's going on, and then we'll open it up for any comments or questions anybody has.
Sounds good. And in order to be heard better, I'll stay 6 feet away, take off my mask so I can talk. In essence, what has come about is the city, probably back in the 80s, built a whole series of townhomes. And when I say city, I mean its residents built a whole series of townhomes on what was probably a larger parcel that was 200 feet long or 300, 400 feet long. So they divvied up these parcels into 15-foot wide individual homes, and they sold them as individual homes. They had a common wall between them. It's called a party wall, and that is one way of building townhomes, is with the party wall. You can't build a townhome with two completely separate walls. And I say that detail because it is one of the details that's within this ordinance, is so that someone could build a townhome today, and their neighbor could build a townhome next week or 5 years from now, separate from one another, yet adjacent to one another. So the zoning and the land use that we've created allows for a 0 lot line. What currently exists within this zoning category is a 7.5-foot setback. Well, with a 15-foot wide lot, if you do 7.5 feet on one side and 7.5 feet on the other side, you have 0. Last time I did that math. So the intent of this is to allow for a 0 lot line that allows people to build back on the existing townhome parcels that we've had in the past. We're not really trying to open this up to do this in other places. It doesn't mean that someone can't come to the council in a future date to ask for those type things, but that is not what we are proposing. This is being proposed strictly on those existing townhome lots. And one of the things that I will go over once we get into the map and the detail of the map, we have found a couple of parcels that were not townhomes. We found a couple of parcels that were duplexes. We'd like to strike that out of the map if this group agrees. We found a couple of parcels that were condominiums that, again, don't need this regulation because they're building as a combined unit. So I think there's at least 3, maybe 4 parcels or groupings of parcels that will be taken out if y'all agree. They're fairly isolated. They're not one of those big contiguous pieces. There is a 50-foot wide parcel within a whole run of like 400 or 500 feet of townhomes. I would propose that we keep that in townhome district, because just because someone took 3 of those lots and made it into one, if we don't allow that to happen, it basically makes the 2 adjacent parcels non-buildable. unless they start combining lots. So when we've got a contiguous run, I would like this group to consider allowing those isolated pieces that are owned by one individual that might own 3 parcels, to allow that to happen. And we do have some people that are currently purchasing 2, 3, and 4 lots to build a single-family home within the townhome district. I would like for y'all to please consider that, because in my mind, it's a lower density. And if you would allow that, I think it's consistent with what the overall principles of the city are, which is if somebody's willing to go in and buy 3 parcels and make one single-family home in the middle, and then have, utilize those setbacks and not basically make the 2 parcels adjacent to it worthless, because if they went to high-density residential without the townhome, those other 2 parcels would be null and void. But again, part of the reason for doing this was when the storm hit, the city had the intentions of allowing people to build back within their existing footprint so people could build back. Because at the density that things were built with the townhomes, it's restricted today within our land development code. And the planning board and the city council was issuing variances, and that's the best way to weaken our land development code and our zoning, is by issuing variance after variance. So this rule makes it consistent with the variances that have been issued, and this rule allows people to basically look at our land development code and see what our intent was. So that's a long-winded, but it gives you a full history, because not all people have been here from the beginning.
And this then would supersede the April 2022 date where non-conforming lots currently have
Correct.
to be completed or started by then.
That is correct. This actually creates, within the land development code, a way of making these truly buildable lots without that sunset that you mentioned.
Right. And these are the ones that we've been approving kind of on a regular basis, so it slows down the homeowner that wants to build, because they have to come in, pay the $300, try for the variance, go to the council, whatever. So that would eliminate that and let these folks move forward on an expeditious manner.
Correct. One of the other things, because Nick and Alora and Gina and I have been basically troubleshooting this thing for the last couple, 3 weeks. One of the other things that we noticed, the way that it's written, it says single-family attached and multifamily attached. I'd like to take the word attached out, because again, a single townhome can build with its own foundation, its own walls, and it is, in all reality, detached. And the next one can build 6 months later or a year later, completely adjacent to it, attached with probably a piece of flashing, but not physically on the same foundation, not the same wall, in that level of attachment. So I would like for the council to consider striking the word attached out, and then at the same time, we put the word in there multifamily, but I don't see how you're gonna get multifamily on a 15-foot wide lot, so I'd also like to scratch the multifamily attached as a whole. Anything else, Nate, that I?
Just a follow-up on Mario's comment that if you excluded a section of homes, you might make the property next door unbuildable. The follow-up on that is, the reason for that is the rules that I don't think anybody's all that familiar with, because we just adopted them, I think in May. No property has these townhome district rules yet, but they did have a condition that said if the property adjacent to you, next door to you, was a different zoning, you still had to have a 7.5-foot side setback. The theory behind that is if you're next to residential general, the residential general person's expecting there to be some separation between the homes. So if we excluded a few parcels from this rezoning, we'd either have to fix that problem, or it would be a setback that everyone would have to live with. And if you have a 20-foot wide parcel and you're all of a sudden gonna have to meet a 7.5-foot setback on one side, it won't work.
Right.
So that's the issue to watch for. Otherwise, you could just exclude them and they just have to deal with their very, very small setbacks, but that could actually make a problem.
Okay, okay. And has this did this go to the state for review?
The comprehensive plan portion of it went to the state. There was more detail in the zoning category creation, but we had to allow this district to be created through the comprehensive plan because we had to increase the amount of impervious surface allowed because the comprehensive plan set it at 50%, which wasn't realistic for a lot of these parcels. So the state did a review on the impervious surface aspect of this. The rest was really just setbacks, which had never been governed by the comprehensive plan.
Okay. And all townhomes have to have pervious pavers, so we're getting back some of that
A little bit of value.
ratio that we gave up in the form of pervious pavers.
Yes, we did that, include that rule in this category. Just big picture for tonight, we don't usually do rezonings this way. We've got on the ordinance that's around the list you've seen, 179 parcels. It's not exactly 179 parcels the way you would normally think of it because it included a few that were like common areas and gap fillers, but it's a lot of parcels. Even if we go ahead and exclude the ones that Mario is going to point out, you're still going to be dealing with maybe 170 or so. It's all being done as a single rezoning initiated by the city. Everyone who's involved with rezoning, all the owners, all the nearby neighbors, they all have an opportunity to speak and complain or commend you, but it is a single act as far as the hearing, the rezoning, the ordinance, and we did it that way primarily because the city was having to drive this train, and we wanted to get all of it done at once and not break it up into a lot of individual ordinances. We would encourage anyone who might want to be excluded, we'd want to talk through that in detail and discourage it because there's an overall planning thought behind this, but that it is possible to take parcels out of this. Mario's going to tell you about some that he's going to recommend to be taken out.
And I can't see this clearly enough to tell you which ones, so I'm gonna have to run back to my office where I have a cleaner print. I'll be right back.
Before we do that, I would feel more comfortable if Gina was the one to make the final decision on what's included and what isn't, because after all, that's her thing, she's the engineer. You know, you come up with your list, and then in my opinion, she should be the final approving thing, because that's what she's supposed to do.
Well, the final answer is going to be the city council. This is the formal.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is to present to city council something the engineers looked at,
Okay.
is agreed with.
Well, I think,
Do you have those parcels that we talked about?
I don't have them like parcel numbers.
No, I'm saying the map that shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got it.
I got them out, so.
She can present what we
Yeah, I
talked
mean,
about.
as long as she concurs, then I'm very happy with it. I think it's a great idea. There were two things that I've had, and you've already addressed one of them anyway. The residential single-family homes attached, I wondered what that meant. You know, I had a question on that, and then I agree with you, multifamily, that was something I was gonna bring up too. I didn't see how that could work. So that was, you know, the only thing, other than that, I'm happy with
okay.
it. You know?
And Gina, for your review, we obviously only have Google past photos and an understanding of what was there to review. I mean, if you go to the site, there's a slide there that may help you, but I think if you and Mario can put your heads together with the detail he's got, and then flush out anything that, from your perspective, might be an issue, can get those out in front, but
By the way, if you go to the property appraiser's website and you go down on the pull downs, you can tell it to give you the photograph, the aerial photograph for 2013, 15, so on and so on. So you can turn on some of those layers that show you the townhomes pre and post storm.
so could you two arrange a meeting time to sit down and kind of go through those together to see if anything
Yeah.
bubbles up?
We can do that.
And then if there's you come with 10 that don't seem to track, or there's a question on, you can jump in the car and go take a look. If it would help to look at the slab or make a recommendation from there, that would be great. The more the better, I think, on something like this. It would save us some work down the road, and I appreciate all the work you've done already to get us as far as we have, because there's a lot of people that would like to rebuild and move things along, so that'd be great. And Nick, what do you need from us tonight? This is a draft, we've got to take some words out, sounds like. So other than public discussion, what are you looking for the board to do tonight?
Well, according to our land development code for rezoning, this board provides a recommendation, conducts a hearing, for a recommendation to the city council. So what we'd be looking for tonight is a recommendation to rezone all these parcels, or a recommendation not to, or a recommendation to rezone with some conditions. That will be what the city council is relying on. I think that between Gina and Mario, they can point out the handful of parcels they do not believe that, and we would build that into the recommendation. If there are others that turn up after the fact, I think we just deal with those at the city council level, since this is a recommendation on a rezoning of approximately 180 parcels. If we get it 95, 98% tonight, I think that's good enough for the recommendation requirement that needs to go to the city council. And for tonight, because it's a rezoning, we don't do these very often, but when we do these, they are real public hearings. Folks get to speak. But in addition, we add a little more formality. If anyone in the room is willing to speak and wants to provide any testimony tonight, or provide feedback, or negative responses or positive responses, I would like to just briefly swear you in. If you're interested in speaking, if you think you might speak, just raise your hand and repeat after me. I swear to tell the whole truth tonight. That's good enough. So,
One more, we missed
Are
one.
you talking about just specific to this topic?
yes.
I am gonna run.
Okay, we're gonna charge on.
Since we're looking to approve this thing, I'd like you to see the parcels
Okay.
that we've talked about taking out.
We'll go
I'm
ahead.
ready to talk.
I just got something from the city clerk to add to the records. I can read this. Is that what you expected?
I just want to note that we did get
Is
one.
this the one from the Britons?
Yes.
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 Are they here?
Is the Britons here? What's the name?
Carol Britton. Do you know what this generally says, or should I read it?
I was just going to note it that we did get one from the Rangers, so I can read it.
Okay.
Would you like me to read it?
Well, why don't we do that? Otherwise, the board won't know what you're.
We've got copies.
Oh, okay. Good enough.
Okay.
If you want to read it.
But I have some questions. I wish they were here, because I question some of the things they state, and I want to know why they state them. You know, they say it's, you know, the doing, let's see, wait a minute, let me quote them. We are comfortable with the tourist residential designation that has been long held. We certainly do not want to impede our neighbors who are currently trying to rebuild, but we think this approval should be secured individually rather than a zoning change, i.e., they think they ought to go the variance way. Okay, if the commission sets up a streamlined process to facilitate existing owners, that will be acceptable to us, but rezoning is problematic, and that's my question. Why is rezoning problematic? I mean, we just got a statement, but we don't know why. And then they go on to say, in short, this rezoning threatens the value of our property and those of our neighbors. Why? I mean, how does it do that?
Just the last part.
And then it also has the potential to increase traffic and parking problems. Okay, I don't need an explanation of that, I understand that. But I don't understand the property value going down, and I don't understand why doing the rezoning is problematic. So, I mean, those are just my comments on it.
It would seem what we're doing is replacing the process of giving variances for situations like we're trying to prove.
And as Mario stated, you know, it's an expensive process, and even though we've recommended not approving them, the council's approved them anyway, so why don't we just get rid of the process? You know, and go with the rezoning?
Well, I think too, the comment that Mario made about the fact that this weakens, when we give so many variances, it tends to weaken
We don't do it, it's the council that's doing it, regardless of what we say, so.
True, but
But we're giving it, so, okay.
Somebody may be able to confirm this. I don't think that the Britons are owners. I think they're located near an owner that would be rezoned. Does that sound correct?
I don't know because I'm not able to gather any of that from,
And when I say owners, I mean owners of a property proposed to be rezoned. I'm looking on the list I have. Don't think they're.
We are long-term property holders on 39th Street, comfortable with the tourist residential designation, which isn't gonna change.
well, it will if their property's rezoned,
Well, to the townhome district,
yeah. So, I mean, we don't know right now whether they're in the town.
but it's only the properties that were townhomes previously, so it shouldn't affect the street, I guess, in my mind. Well, it's hard to tell without them being here. Okay, Mario, you have,
I did grab the map. There's a parcel here, and I can't really tell. Again, between the mask and the fog, I can't read the darn thing, so.
is
Excuse
that
me.
the brain fog or the glasses
The
fog?
glasses fog because of the mask. So there's a condominium complex on 42nd Street
Yeah,
that I think needs to come out. It's clearly, when you look at the graphics, it's a condo, so that should come out.
There are two, one water side and one way back, which one are you on 42nd Street?
On 42nd Street, it's the cluster. It is.
on the corner
that
of
one right there.
42nd.
It's on the east side.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on the east side of the road.
You can zoom in as much as
Oh,
you need to.
excellent. Wish you'd done this
Same-
before I
same
ran
amount.
across the street. So you have 42nd Street, it's halfway up the block on the east side. The next one is on,
This, where it has an outline colors.
correct, that's 42nd.
We're talking about this cluster, and the reason why it looks like 4 individual parcels with a border around it is those are the common areas. Right here.
Yeah, familiar with that one.
Okay. On 42nd Street, this is the one we're speaking about.
Yeah.
And then there's a very large parcel on 35th Street. And when you look at it, it looks like it's approximately 120 feet wide. So we like to take that one out. And then there's one on, or 2 lots on 31st Street that are already 30-foot wide lots. How we got that one in there, I really don't know.
Was the 35th Street clear on everybody's map in their hand? That one's easier to see.
I think so. These are tiny blurry numbers on this map.
Correct, yeah.
Come on,
And that's,
you can do better.
That's my guess. Did I get it right?
that's the one on 35th,
Okay.
Right here, where it's,
and this is the one on 31st. And they're already, it's just a lot split.
Okay.
And again, Gina and I will continue to look at this, and if we see anything else that needs to be removed, I'm thinking removal is a lot easier for us to say it's okay than adding.
Okay. So now that we've gone through that, we're gonna open the public hearing portion, and we encourage you to, speak deeply or loudly so everybody can hear. Also, we'd like you to state your name and where you, reside for the record. Who would like to lead us off? Okay?
Adrian Welly, 1008 15th Street, 16B. My question's about going from the townhome, if you were to sell 3 of them, this single family, it does lower the density, but what about the impervious? Is that gonna be changed, or are they allowed to go to 85%?
I think since it stays in the same zoning, it needs to follow all the same rules.
Okay. So,
Just to keep things clean.
Okay, can I say something on this? one?
Certainly.
So, well, because this is one of my questions. If you have 85%, as it's written right now, 85%, as long as you're using pervious pavers or gravel. So you may not actually be able to get to 85%. So You're allowed 85% as long as you're using the right. Basically, it's roof or pool. 85% roof or pool only.
Okay.
Is that the intent of this? That's the intent?
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
All right.
Thank you, Gene. Who's next?
Lance Watson, Southeastern Consulting Engineers. I have two questions. My first one was, regarding the ordinance for recovenant and footprint. If something does not fall in this, I can't imagine, I haven't looked at the map, obviously, it's not out yet, but, if something were to not fall in the area that was setback or adjoined or something like that before, could they still go to that same zero line setback as long as they stay in the footprint? Would this abolish would this get rid of that, or would they still good for that time frame?
No, that ordinance isn't affected by this, it's just going to expire fairly soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
April 22.
All right, second question, regarding taking the multifamily out, there's a lot that, I talked to Mario and I talked to Gina about it, and it is a peculiar lot that will fall into the townhome district and is multifamily stacked and was before Hurricane Michael, and so I just wanted to know how that would play out.
What's the ownership in that, Reeves?
Sorry.
Is it three separate owners?
Yeah,
It's
so
stacked?
it's two separate owners stacked in this, and so what happened was, and it's two separate parcels too. And the owners had the upper airspace, the lower guys weren't rebuilt, so unless we get some skyhooks, they were in bad shape. So they had to buy the lower units, so now we have two parcels of airspace in here, and plan to build back a stacked, 2-unit building.
So they're gonna rent the bottom, or what are they gonna, I mean, what's their intent? They're gonna live in both of them, or?
I think they were gonna keep one to themselves and rent one, maybe, something like that. We had a meeting with Brian Cathy,
Yeah.
he's the contractor and the owner, I can't remember exactly, but they're waiting on this variant, or this ordinance to go through, and I just wanna make sure that we're not kicked completely out of it by that multifamily being taken out.
Duplex is still a
That would be multifamily.
duplex is still a thing. 'Cause I thought you were allowed to do duplexes on single family lots.
So-
We need to check into that.
The only things that are principal uses, residential, single-family, multifamily, residential care facilities, and group homes. Those are the four things that ones.
I can speak to this to some degree. I looked at the comprehensive plan today on this topic, just to confirm how we handled it. And it says that if the parcel was in existence prior to Hurricane Michael, that it could be rebuilt with the same number of units. I think the land development code says something similar. I didn't look at it today. So what we're really dealing with on most of these parcels is they already exceed the 8 units per acre limit that's available. So if there is one oddball parcel that actually had 2 units on it, and we can confirm that and show that historically it's had multiple parcel ID numbers and multiple mailing addresses and utility accounts, we probably just allow
It's
We
really
could al-
unique.
we could also
Yeah, it's
handle that
unique.
grandfather.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see a lot of that, but if there are some well-established examples, just like how a 15-foot wide parcel is gonna exceed 8 units per acre, we can, I think, allow some exceptions if they're documented well.
Yeah, and we have allowed some, we've had some already come through the building department where they actually had, old house plans, they had water meters, history of water meters, where they had 2 dwellings on one small property.
Okay. So I guess in answer to your question, that would be okay as an exception to the townhome district.
Okay.
Pre-existing, comes under pre-existing, and I would think that that would have to be done by the April 22 to qualify for that, and then that sunsets if we don't extend it, and they wouldn't have the right to do that.
So this, that.
I don't think the grandfathering sunsets. This is under the grandfathering clauses of the comprehensive plan, the land development code, generally applicable throughout the city.
Right.
Certainly, we don't want to guarantee an approval tonight informally, but I think it works.
Yeah.
Okay.
even outside the grandfather clause, right?
Right,
that's
because
two
these lots you're talking about are on the list to be put in the townhouse district, so
Okay.
the setback would be an issue. The grandfathering is in the land development code and comp plan, so.
Okay.
That parcel also didn't go out.
Yeah, that would be.
Okay, in that map, I did miss two parcels, all the way over here on the very east end, there's two parcels here that are also 30 feet, so.
Hey, you and Gina can
Yep.
hammer those out, that'd be great. Are you okay, Lance, then? with
But I'm good, as long as it won't, you know, possibility it won't go away after the grandfather clause is up, and being that it's still two separate parcels. Two stacked units, two separate airspace, legal airspace, ownership parcels.
I guess I had trouble seeing why that would be different from a non-conforming lot.
Yeah, they're both not conforming on density, it's just a different type of layout.
But you'd be taking someone's parcel away from them just by not allowing it.
Well, you're doing the same thing on non-conforming lots. If they don't build by the date, they can't build on it.
They can't build within the setbacks.
They can't build back what they had before. They could build something smaller if they met the setbacks.
Right.
So
So
I guess that's
it's the
what I'm
same
saying.
thing, it's in the town district, and it's multifamily.
So the townhome district designation is going to help them more with the setbacks
Zero
than
size.
the ordinance that allows for the same footprint, because either way, they may be allowed to do a 0-foot setback, but in the townhome district, they can move the structure up and down those property lines, they can lengthen it a few feet. Under the ordinance that will sunset, they have to work with the exact same footprint.
Right.
And what we generally run into on the variances is they're the ones in the last 18 months, they're not just saying, we want to rebuild attached, they're saying, we want to add 2 feet, or we want to be further back from the road. And that's why they're getting variances. The townhome district eliminates the need for that because it doesn't tie anything to where the prior building was located. It just provides overall clean rules that apply to construction.
Okay.
I guess what I'm asking is, rather than, you know, something after the grandfather clause, they just lose out on this, it states something, you know, an exception, you know, since it's not gonna, since we're taking multifamily out, have an exception that if it was multifamily stacked units before, maybe that sounds kind of like the grandfather clause, but not necessarily it was just that before, and that's what it was, but more along the lines of these are individual parcels with individual owners, with individual airspace stacked. That's the issue. It wasn't just somebody that decided to use their upper floor as a second unit or rent. These are separate, these are legally separate parcels.
Well, I can read the clause of the comprehensive plan, and if you give me a minute, I can find the same type of clause from land development code. This does not expire. This is not a sunsetting rule. It says parcels of record are recorded platted lots that are within a land use category that allows for residential development and that existed on or prior to the original adoption date of this plan shall not be prohibited by applicable density requirements from having the same number of dwelling units as existed on them October 9th, 2018. So if those conditions are met, if that parcel, small as it is, had 2 units previously,
Then they're good.
then they'll be allowed 2 units still, and that doesn't go away when some date happens.
So this will specifically say there is no multifamily in this land use.
Well, right now, it says multifamily is allowed. We have to change the
If it
wording.
comes out, is it possible to say except unless it meets that portion of the comp plan?
Well, I don't know that it needs to be stated because we already have these grandfather.
Yeah.
There's other things that have been used where it's conflicting in the code to deny things, but I guess that's where I'm seeing it, you know, I've presented things that have, they're conflicting in different parts of the land development code, the comprehensive plan, and it's whatever's most convenient to deny, if that's what is wanted to happen, it has been used.
So, to that point, all the townhomes that are going into this district will still be non-conforming with respect to density, every single one of them, including that.
Right.
So if we allow one townhome to be built, then we have to allow that.
Okay, so it won't say no, multifamily is not allowed.
Right. Because there is, the density's still gonna be 8 units per acre, none of them meet it,
Right,
so.
okay.
Okay.
So we're not addressing the comp plan tonight, just the ordinance.
Correct. And we're actually, I mean, we're looking for some feedback on the rules, but what we're really doing formally is providing a recommendation on which parcels should become townhome district.
Okay. All right, we good on that then?
Was it that one more?
Yeah, you good.
I'll go next. Can you hear me from here?
Yes.
Okay. I actually had written in, it's Cherie Bryant, and it's 105 South 35th Street, number 3. Currently live in Tallahassee, 1425 Jackson Street. And, I had written in about the other parcel on 35th Street. I've already rebuilt the home.
Well, that's a
to
different issue.
the standards to,
Mhm.
yeah,
That's a 100-foot wide parcel on.
Oh, this is the,
Lots of,
well,
Glo-
there's 3 of them, so there's 2 single-family homes that have already been built on either side, so you've got one parcel in the middle that's 20 feet wide. And so we both built single-family to the code on either side, and when I came in to build, I considered a variance, it was not, there was the separation for the fire code, and so at the time, I was told that when the next parcel that came in needed to come in, there would be at least a 10-foot separation between structures, to meet the fire code, and so now that the town has, I'm proposed to be in the townhouse district, and so my concern is how does that parcel come in and build without destroying the fence and the trees and everything that I'm building on the property edge? And 7.5 is a big, 7.5 might be too wide, I understand that, but is there some smaller amount that could work that would still preserve, the integrity of my lot without limiting them from building?
Can you come show us your lot? It's kind of hard to,
Yeah, it's hard.
so I'm assuming you're talking here.
Yeah, the very north one, so I'm on the top north edge,
And you built a townhome or a
single
single?
family home.
And you have your 7.5-foot setback on both sides? So that it's that next parcel towards the water's edge that we are proposing that your parcel be townhome. We're proposing that parcel be townhome. We're proposing to take out that large lot from townhome.
Right.
It's gonna be a complex site because to the west, it'll be single family, so they will have to have a 7.5-foot setback from that one side. It almost makes that single parcel, and again, keep in mind, we can't fix everything with this. This fixes a lot, but that is one particular parcel, since we're taking out that larger parcel, that might have to build back on its existing footprint, and that might be the only way to do it. Now, if you built 7.5 feet away, if you stay in the townhome and they go into the townhome, they can build to that 0 lot line because they've got a relatively narrow lot. You can build that way and stay on your own side of
Well, I'm
of
already,
the property.
my house is already built.
No, I'm saying that your other owner, if you put up a fence,
Yeah.
you can tell them, stay off my property, and they'll have to figure out a way of doing it. They should probably come over and talk to you, so there's probably a little bit easier way for them to do it. But again, as good neighbors, if you two work together, it is done all over the world. I mean, 0 lot lines are actually quite common.
Is the roof overhang allowed to come onto?
No.
So that would have to account for the roof
They'll,
overhang?
what is typically done in a 0 lot line is you put up a parapet, which
Uh-huh.
means it goes up above the roof, and then your roof flashes to that, and then it drips on your own property.
But there's nothing for them to connect to, right?
No,
On my side.
they will not connect to your home. in any
Right,
way,
well, they
shape, or
can't
form.
because there's 7.5 feet difference, but I'm just making, because I'm planting trees and, so I just wanted to make sure that their roof line, because the way I read the code, the roof could go over
no,
that
They-
footprint.
you own the air too.
Yeah, you own the air, and their lot line, I mean, if this is the parcel,
Mhm.
they'll build a wall that just
Okay.
extends up over their roof,
Mhm.
and then they'll flash their roof so it goes this way and this way, so water should fall on their own property.
Okay.
You know, for painting this side of the house, they'll probably wanna talk to you to put up
Well, we
this
think
side.
they need to leave a little space just to get garbage cans and things like that.
And there probably are some rules in our land development code that talk about the roof going into a setback area, but with it being on the property line, you wouldn't be able to extend into
That would be, that
another,
was my
another
concern.
owner's
Yeah.
property.
Yeah, they
You
could-
on the air,
Yeah.
they can't go in the second.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Okay. Good question. Do we have anybody else that would like to speak on the townhome district? Okay, let the record reflect that we're done with the public portion of the meeting, and we'll open it up to any discussion here on the table. Any questions or anything, more clarification we need before we move to approve or disapprove or modify?
I just want to say that I see there's no reason not to recommend approval on this. I mean, it cuts out the variances, it's not gonna probably satisfy anyone, but I think it's about as close as we can come to solving the problem without an awful lot of work.
I agree with Jim.
And I think what I like about it is expedites the building process, moves them down the road, saves money, and hopefully clear that up. So, we have some, sorry, go ahead. We have some work that we need to do on identifying the particular lots that might come out of here or go in, which is a work in progress. And we have some multifamily language that we need to,
Well, that's in the code though, that's
in the code,
I mean, that's in
in
the
the
common
ordinance that we need
So
to
we're not
take up,
addressing
right,
that.
draft. So I think what we're asking is, do we have a motion to move forward with this and pass it on to the council? Does that work, Nick?
Yes, and to the best that we can in that motion, let's address some of these excluded parcels. It may be by referring to a map that Mario's been marking up, or a list, or, the cleanest we can get this recommendation to match exactly what the council should be considering, the better. It sounds like we've got a handful that we want to exclude. Mario, if you think that's marked up pretty well, that could be,
Yeah.
that could just be an
If I could
exhibit
just
to the
get
motion.
initials from everybody on this, I think that would create a good record.
I won't initial until Gina's approved it, she said everything.
Regina, if you will consider.
Well, I mean,
I think,
I think I need to.
to be
look at
fair to
this
Gina,
more.
she really needs to go through it and look at them on an individual basis.
The alternative would be to approve the entire, or to recommend approval on the entire list that we have, knowing that half dozen,
We'll have some
maybe 10
deletes.
would be deleted.
Okay, I have a suggestion. We recommend the council approve it on the condition the city engineer reviews and concurs with the parcels selected for rezoning. That means she gets final review.
Okay.
Let's not call it city engineer.
Building.
Let's not make-
What are you then?
I don't know. I'm not a city engineer.
Well,
Very,
you're now the city engineer.
That's
No, seriously, what are you? I thought you were the city engineer.
building.
No, that's a Dewberry. Dewberry's the city engineer.
So what are you?
So Josh Baxter.
What's your official
Plan reviewer?
Plan review.
plan reviewer?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'd substitute that for the city's plan reviewer.
So I would have had you,
Now you need to start again, now that we know.
Well,
what she
okay.
is.
Okay, that we recommend city council approve the ordinance as written based on the condition that the city planner reviews and concurs with the parcels selected for rezoning.
The city planner, somebody else, plan reviewer.
Plan reviewer.
Plan reviewer.
Gina,
I don't claim to be the smartest guy in the world.
okay.
I'll second.
One point of clarification, does that cover us on the multifamily language and?
That's really a whole
Pulling that out.
separate topic, and, it sounds like why don't we have that motion first and then continue that conversation about, so what we have is, we have a currently adopted existing set of rules, and we're working through kind of two things at once, but what we need first, the formal action tonight, is the recommendation on the rezonings. The rest of that conversation was really about, are the existing rules, are they perfect, or are they just close?
Okay. So, did you get that?
Yeah.
You wanna read it back to us, or can you read it back to us?
Well, Mr. Bush was making a motion to recommend city council approval. I don't have it all completely down here, so.
I'll give it to you after the meeting.
Yeah.
She'll listen to the recording.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. Yeah.
all right, that's fine. Do we have a second?
That's second.
Okay.
Ready?
Can you
Mr.
call the
Dri-
roll when
yeah.
you're ready?
Mr. Driver?
Yes.
Ms. Lindsay?
Yes.
Mr. Kerrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Ms. Miller? Yes.
Okay.
The remainder of the conversation, if you want to continue it, was the language about removing the word attached in the current rules. We discussed maybe removing the word multifamily in the current rules. And the background of that conversation is being clear to folks in the future who are wondering, do I have to build attached? Or can I build detached? Can I build 2 feet off the property line? Do I have to build exactly on the property line? Those are the issues that play. Because the current wording does say attached, and it will lead a lot of people to believe that they can only build right on the property line attached.
Which is not the case that we're trying to do in my mind.
I mean, this is gonna require a change to the comp plan.
Land development code, not the comp plan.
This is not in the comp plan? You're not gonna put you're not gonna put the town district in the comp plan? Everything, all the other districts are in the comp plan.
It's a zoning category that's authorized in the comp plan. It says that
I don't have my copy of the comp plan.
it may not be in that copy anyways, it was an amendment in May that was done. There's not a comprehensive plan future land use category called townhome district. The high density residential district allows for this higher impervious surface level if it's within the townhome district, which can only be allowed in the residential high density comprehensive plan future land use.
So the city amended the comp plan without it going through us?
It went through this board, it went through the state, 2 hearings.
You were not here, it was when the COVID thing first hit, and we had a quorum, we had 3 people show up to the meeting, and we had it.
And the reason for that, the reason why the comprehensive plan needed to be addressed was that this townhome district will only live inside residential high density, which is a future land use category of the comprehensive plan. But that category had a stricter impervious surface limit than what this does. So we adjusted the impervious surface rules in the comprehensive plan so that this zoning district could exist.
To me, it seems to be much easier just to add a new zoning district and change the high density back to what it was before.
We did add a new zoning district.
Oh, so it is in the comp plan?
No, it's in the land development code. Zoning's not in the comprehensive plan, future land use categories are. What's confusing, if you go to Bay County or most cities, there are going to be more zoning districts than future land use districts. So usually in most cities and most counties, one future land use category in the comp plan could fit 2 or 3 or 4, maybe 5 different zoning categories. Historically in Mexico Beach, there was a future land use category in the comp plan with an identical name to a zoning district in the land development code with similar rules but not identical. A good example is we have rules for setbacks in the zoning categories, but there's no rules for setbacks in the future land use categories in the comprehensive plan. So that was a change for the city compared to what it usually looks like, but that's a common approach for most cities and counties to have more zoning categories than future land use categories.
It just seems to me to make it simple to have both of them reflect each other. It's just me.
We're just looking to see what the same plan.
So, to clarify, the next thing we need to do is to decide if we want to strike attached and multifamily. Is that correct?
That would be helpful for the city council as they're trying to decide what to do with that
And,
language.
you know, have no problem with striking attached. And we have determined that the multifamily does not need to be stricken from this because we have another way of handling a multifamily situation. That's correct?
And we would like to strike multifamily,
Because it can be handled.
because it can be handled as a different.
Okay, okay. So that's what we need. We need a motion to strike the terminology attached and multifamily.
I think that would be reassuring to the city council as they're looking at this issue.
Okay, then I so move to strike those two terms.
Okay. Do we have a
Did
second?
we get a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Driver?
Yes.
Ms. Lindsay?
Yes.
Mr. Harrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. That wraps up the townhome district. And will the city council address that in tomorrow's meeting?
Next week.
Next week.
So,
Is it next week they delayed theirs or?
The 22nd is their normal meeting.
Okay.
just for the room in general, so the rest of this process of this rezoning, there's going to be a first reading at next week's city council meeting, then it'll be a full month later that they're going to do their adoption. It's October
27th.
Right, so it's not gonna be rushed through, there'll be opportunities if people are just realizing something that they need to bring up to the city council. We didn't squeeze those meetings
Yeah.
too closely. There'll be
Yeah.
newspaper ads and time for folks to communicate their concerns.
Okay. Next I have on the agenda, the change of occupancy at 4101 Highway 98. See anything in the packet on that?
There's just a letter saying, this is what I want to do.
Okay. Are you 410?
Well, not yet.
Okay.
Hopefully, but not yet.
Tell us what's up then.
Okay, my name is Mark Rice, and I'm the principal owner of Mexico Beach Wine and Spirits and also Mexico Beach Market. We relocated the liquor store after the storm, after being open for 40 days. We moved over next door to the post office in April of 19. And it wasn't even really a legitimate space, it was a storage space. And was doing quite well there. And then in March of this year, the space, well, actually in February of this past year, of 2020, the space next door became available, approximately 800 square feet. And so we took that. We also rented that space. And rather than expand our liquor store and go into our next phase, we decided to open up a grocery store instead, or a market. And that was approved, and it's gone quite well. But since the virus and all the chain of events since then, both stores have just really taken off. And probably the grocery store has been a bit of a struggle just for the simple fact that we were working on opening it right when the virus hit, so I was delayed with my equipment and so on and so forth. The long of the story is that both have grown, and we were there because it was the only option available after the storm, and they both have grown to where the liquor store needs more space, but the grocery store cannot succeed without getting more space. We have no storage. I have, everything that I have right now is in the store, so there's no backup. It's becoming, we're busted at the seams. Jason Adams has this building over there, at whatever this address is. I got 4 copies of what I wrote out. I don't know what.
Right. It's the old post office way back when,
Way back, I'm told, I've been here about 4 years, so it was before my,
and then there's the restaurant.
it was a deli.
Yeah.
Right here at 41st. I think the address, they actually had changed to 41st Street, but only to have it changed back like last week. So we, Jason and I started talking. The Space Place where we are located just recently changed ownership. And that kind of, for various reasons, prompted me to go look for other options. And Jason's building, I'd always heard it was quite expensive. Anyway, I went to see Jason. It's a beautiful space. It fits us perfect, allows for growth, expansion, but it's zoned tourist commercial. So we don't know if, the description does not describe either approved or disapproved businesses. Neither grocery store or the liquor store are listed as approved or disapproved, and that's one here. We have plans of, the building itself has two offices or two spaces. One's approximately 2,000, the other's approximately 900 square feet. We were first talking about renting the 2,000 square feet, but since then, Jason and I'm trying to purchase the building. If we can, obviously need approval and I can get the financing and all that, which I think we can. And, I'm kind of in a bit of a conundrum with the market, the grocery store, because we all, let's face it, we all want a big grocery store here, I think. And that's not, I have no grocery experience whatsoever. I did it on the fly. It's going quite well. I mean, we're ringing a lot of, we're doing, a couple hundred rings, maybe even close to 300 rings a day, but we're not a full service market or grocery store, and therefore we are limited to what we can do by the footprint we're in. And I can do a lot of things with this space, even if a market, I'm gonna keep the market going, moving forward, but again, I don't know if somebody's gonna come in with a Piggly Wiggly or, a Super Value or something. And then we would look at our options for becoming a deli or something like that with the rest of the space. So I wanna build it out for the long haul, we're here for the long haul.
So, go ahead.
If you look on page 18 of the LDR.
That was my next question.
It does not include liquor sale. It said the closest thing is gasoline sales combined with small food mart. But that doesn't really speak to his problem. He is not included here or in prohibited.
He's not neither
No.
category.
Not either
No.
one, no.
No.
And that's the
Right.
issue.
Yeah.
If it was a more clear-cut, categorization, this would be able to be handled more straightforwardly. To be honest, it's right on the edge of what would be prohibited or allowed. So staff wanted your opinion, and it would be setting precedent. If somebody else came along and asked for the same thing in tourist commercial later, we would very likely be held to it. But it may be that this category should have always clearly defined those uses as being allowed. Like I said, it's right on the edge of what's allowed.
Yeah.
Where 42nd Pizza used to be, 42nd.
No, so
Road.
it's-
No, I know, but
Oh,
what were they zoned? Cause they were
General commercial.
Also.
tourist commercial,
Yep.
so that was a restaurant type situation.
Yeah.
well,
I personally, if you look at what is in that area, it makes some sense. The marina now has groceries, but he is absolutely correct. He doesn't have any, either it's okay or it's prohibited. He doesn't exist in this particular area. It makes sense to me from, a business viewpoint, because there are businesses down there and, there's food available at the marina now, so.
In order,
But I don't know what we do about this.
well, the way to solve it is to amend the LDR to include neighborhood convenience and specialty stores.
And is the issue now because of liquor, because that building was built to be a store? It was built by Sunshine Junior Store, the Panama City. It was a retail store that sold beer and wine long before it was a restaurant and anything else. That's what it existed as for many years, served the community as a store. It will be a store again, selling one layer beyond beer and wine. Is that the issue? Because
The liquor issue probably brings it more to the forefront, but the
Yeah.
same issue exists for a grocery store. It's not clearly in the allowed list or prohibited list. There are some fairly intense uses allowed in the list for allowed, you have hotels, you have gas stations, there are, let's see, there's,
Souvenir shops, boutiques.
Funeral homes.
Yeah, there's some vague things, there's some pretty vague
Yeah.
descriptions in there.
So, you know, like I said, I don't have a problem with it, it makes sense where it's located. I remember when the Sunshine did have a place down there, and so that makes good sense. But the question is, what do we do for this gentleman right now, and what are we gonna have to do to the LDR?
Well, I think there's a couple problems here. First of all, he's not the landowner, so I'm not sure he can request.
Well, the landowner was coming with me, only he had a family emergency that came up tonight.
Okay.
It was his idea for me to purchase the property, because I wanted the smaller side is built out for his office, actually. So, I mean, you're not gonna have any problem there.
The landowner is on board, I've talked to him several times about it.
has there been a development owner application submitted, or is this just guidance right now that they need? Because that's the more formal way to handle this
Right,
question.
Jason
Is
should
a
be
review of
applying for a
development owner
development.
Well, I mean, we can get Jason to apply for development order application if that's what we need.
I mean, it doesn't make much sense for me to go through all that if y'all aren't gonna, approve it.
Well, again, that's what I say, I think we need to amend the LDR to include that, in case somebody wants to do something similar. That's the easiest thing to do.
Well, eventually, this place is coming back, I mean, there's still not a lot of retail opportunities, whether it be for a building or for a business. We cannot continue to exist where we are, and continue to grow. The time, this is almost destiny. So it would be very important for, I think, the well-being, we've been very successful. I think we've, served the community quite well, in terms of what we've offered and also what we've paid in taxes. And I think we can do even more, in the right location.
Well, I commend you for doing it. You said you weren't a shop owner, you weren't a grocery store opener, but the grocery store.
Just seemed like the right thing to do.
And I would think that the local citizens appreciate what you've done as well, and it would be a hardship if it left. So,
It would be,
I wanna find a way to make it happen.
I think also we've always spoken at our meetings about needing more commercial and not wanting to change the commercial to residential, because the effects on amenity base and stuff like that, so,
well, there's a number of people in the neighborhood that are probably upset with us, not because of all the craziness, but because of all the trucks and all the traffic that come in there. We're right next door to the post office, and, it was kind of a sleepy little area prior to us coming, and then, it's a hot spot, and it can serve a broader base, and we've not done any advertising. It was just sending them all over to Gulf County, and we've built a model that works here and want to continue with that. But I've, gone through, well, this is my first real owner, and I have to be able to swing freely, to be creative, to build the business based on what the community is needing or what the tourism is needing, and I cannot, my hands are held back there, so.
well, I don't think we can, act until we have the particular paperwork that we need. I don't wanna speak for the board, but, I would initially be in favor of, making some, arrangement so he could proceed
I
with
wasn't
this,
aware
but I
of
can't
any,
speak for the board, so.
paperwork that needs to be done.
Just give me a minute, okay? So I think what we need to do is, right this minute, if you need it tomorrow, Jason's gotta fill out the development order and run that through to make it legally. And if we need to amend the LDR per what Jim's saying to, move forward, Nick, what do you think would be the best?
You have a few options, and Jim's suggestion is the cleanest, most valid, defensible option. It will probably take minimum 6 weeks, more likely 8 to 10 weeks to do it. But that could be done, and that would be a very diverse.
You know, we could grant a variance on land use, but again, that's something that we don't want to do. When are you talking about moving forward?
Well, at the end of the, ideally at the end of the month, but I don't know, he doesn't have his, certificate of occupancy yet. So he's still got a little bit left to do to finish the build out. But the sooner the better. Cause we're gonna try to do this without closing, and I wanna do it in the off season, obviously.
I just think we ought to do it right, and, you know, if we keep things postponed 2 weeks or whatever, then he's postponed 2 weeks. I just think, you know, it's obviously, the LDR is not, doesn't include everything in this district it needs to, so
Right.
we need to change it.
Yeah, even if I wasn't trying to move over there, that looked like it needed a little bit of revision.
Yeah,
Just-
it's not intended to have to say everything. The idea is in very similar uses. It's just, this is a tough one. Despite that the city is
Right.
probably gonna support and want a grocery store, the wording's not the best.
So if
You
you
had mentioned that there had been a store there in the past.
Yeah, that's what the building was built for. That store existed there for many, many years.
I don't know why it's not consistent when it was already there in the past.
Yeah, I think that if there's any issue, it's with the liquor perhaps with some, which is different than what it was.
Well, if you include a specialty store in that category, that includes liquor.
Again, I said I'm for it, and that's what it, original use was.
And just for the record, I think there's no building there now. Is there a building?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
They survived, they
What is,
survived.
what is the square footage? Because we have a rule that says small food marts with gas, but
It's,
how big is it?
29.
well, it's 2,900 square feet, the whole, but it's divided into two spaces, 2,000 square feet and 900 square feet.
Okay.
And those are approximate figures.
And you've all been to a variety of size food marts attached to gas stations. You can compare that as far as your thoughts.
Just so you know where it is, the only place that grocery stores and specialty stores are listed is on page 15 of the LDR, under general commercial zoning district. That's the only place that grocery stores and specialty stores are listed, so, you know, that's what we're looking at.
The other option is
A gas
pursue
station.
a zoning change to general commercial. It just will be by itself surrounded by other zoning.
One more point to bring up here is he's currently in a building that's zoned low density residential.
Is that what it
That's
is?
right, and the council approved him to move in there, he came before the board and he did his.
A bigger exception.
I'm getting pretty good at this.
I'm just thinking, you know, if there was a convenience store there in the past, then the difference between a convenience store and a grocery store is they both have Twinkies, they both have Coca-Cola, they both have napkins. He's just calling it a grocery store. Call it George and approve it because it's the same thing.
Convenience stores, well, they have beer,
I
not
was gonna
necessarily.
say, they sell beer,
Yeah.
most of them.
Well, in the February 2020 map, it's still general commercial. Right there.
What's that?
No, you're talking about his existing location, not the new location.
I'm talking about his existing location, yeah.
Yeah, his existing location is,
General commercial right here,
Yeah, I thought it
where?
right there.
That's not where he is.
Where is he here? That's where he's
So-
at.
Oh, yeah,
it's on
that is
that
where he
map.
is, that is where he is, that's not the right map.
It might make
This is
some,
the
some
one they just gave me.
homeowners.
That's a
Not
whole
more than
other,
a month
that's a
ago.
whole other issue.
Well, then, I got another correct one? Good lord.
So how can we get
I got that
them
2 months ago.
in the quickest and the least painful to help the city?
Have him say he's a gas station without gas. He's a convenience store. Again, if you,
Well,
if
that's
you already
what-
had a convenience store there, just call it a convenience store that,
Okay. But the liquor side, like,
okay, the liquor side, that's a little bit different because again, typically convenience stores sell beer and occasionally wine, but hard alcohol is a little bit different. So that's the harder.
well, we were open for 40 days next door to Gulf Foods. I think some of y'all were along for that ride. And I think there was a liquor store further down here in one of these cottages years ago, not too very long ago. So, I mean, I don't know why it wouldn't be, I mean, the liquor store is the whole reason for being. It's supporting It's how we built out the grocery store.
And there was a liquor store in that Gulf Food strip prior to you.
There had been at one time, yes, sir.
Right. And I think to be fair to the neighbors, there needs to be some sort of posting or something to give them an opportunity to yay or nay, liquor store, convenience store, grocery store, whatever, if we're stretching the boundary on that, rather than just have them move in there.
Well, my intent is to go by the book, do things right. I don't want to create any waves. But we just don't, we've had to be creative where we are, and this seemed like a prime opportunity, a great step forward, and I don't know of any other options to explore, other than this one.
Okay, so I'm kind of,
So what's my action item here?
well, I think it's balls in our court right now.
Do you need that development order from Jason? Or does that matter right now?
Well, I don't think it's gonna do any good, because right now it's not allowed in the zoning district.
Yeah.
It's not allowed.
Not allowed. It's because it's not addressed. That's why it's not allowed.
But it's also not denied.
It's not prohibited.
That's what I'm saying, it needs to be
It's
fixed.
in that gray area.
Yeah.
If it's not prohibited, it could be approved. The allowable list is.
Not everything's gonna be 100% inclusive, no matter what we do.
Yeah.
Somebody will invent a Ouija board that we didn't know about.
You're right,
If they
I
ever
would.
leave this building setting empty for who knows how long, or.
Well,
how
yes, ma'am, he
long.
originally, before the hurricane, was gonna tear down and build condos. And then after the storm, he saw there was there was no retail left. So he dropped back and rebuilt the building. The building, the structure itself survived, so the inside got flooded. And, he'd been trying to rent it since then, I guess.
I'd say it'd be better to have something there than have nothing there.
Yeah, agree.
So let's circle back then. If he were to fill out the paperwork through your office, then you could bring it to us and we could approve it, because it's not prohibited.
It doesn't even
Is
have to
that
come.
true?
I mean, Jason will be there tomorrow to fill out the paperwork, that's not a problem. I mean,
Right.
he's on board,
Well,
so,
but is that what we need to do tonight, is to say, okay, this is the way we're gonna go? That's what I'm asking.
yeah, I mean, I think you guys need to make a recommendation to council on how you wanna proceed, and if that means Jason coming in and filling out the paperwork, but at least the council knows what this board feels.
And I think that makes sense, but I think that's the way we need to go.
Yeah.
We need to have the proper paperwork filled out, and, I'm happy to say that we should recommend this to the council. And that way, nobody's held up and we move along. So,
So we could have a development order done tomorrow and, subject to approval, we should review that development order, the board.
The way it could be handled, if you provide a recommendation tonight, you could see the formal application at your next meeting, and the city council could then consider it for adoption at their meeting following that, so it would be pushed in October instead of next week, but that would give you an opportunity to see a real application on paper.
Or you could have a special meeting to review it and knock it out, and then have it ready for them for the next meeting.
That's an option.
I think that would be the way to go.
and I think if we include the fact that what we intend to do with it, and understand when we send it to the council, that we know that it's not specifically approved, but then again, it's not prohibited. So I think that makes sense.
Okay. Well, do we have a motion then that, they go ahead and, the landowner fills out a development, order, and then, give us a meeting date, some days, give you guys some days to review it, run it through the system, and then we have a special meeting and go, it shouldn't take you a day or two to do that, and we'll just pull a special meeting and.
If I could propose a day and time,
Sure.
Thursday afternoon, 5 o'clock.
Does that work? Good enough here? That's fine for me. Oh, you know what? I won't be here, but, I'll be in Atlanta, but you guys can carry on.
When is the first budget hearing for the city council?
The 17th, 6 o'clock.
Okay. Got it.
I'm trying to combine things.
Got it.
Is that meeting, Mario, is that something I'm supposed to attend or not?
Again, I think this group has heard sufficient with the actual application. I don't know that it's.
No, we just need the landowner to speak. If he's doing the development or whatever, he doesn't have to be here, we can just do the
His
development.
application will speak for.
So,
I mean, the application is really just gonna say what he's gonna.
Formalize.
It's gonna formalize it, but there's not gonna be any new information to.
right, okay, so, is that okay? I can't be here?
No.
Okay, all right, 17th at 5 o'clock, special meeting of the planning and zoning to review the request,
Relocation.
development order. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you for coming.
So are we gonna make a motion to do it?
Do we need a motion now, or do we just make a plan for that?
Well, we said we were gonna review it before we
Yeah.
make a motion.
Right.
I think we just called a special meeting, which we just did, so we're all
I
set.
could call it Mexico Beach Wine and Spirits and Boutique, and then it would fit, wouldn't it? Boutiques are allowed.
Well, the wine and spirits is the part that's gonna get the most.
It's
Just say physique.
Okay, next on the agenda, we've got the lot split, 111 30th Street, request to split the existing parcel into 2 lots. Gonna open the public hearing, and, if you are going to speak on this matter, please state your name and address, and answers up.
Max Watson, Southeastern Consulting Engineers. Now, I'll say on basketball for you to hear me, but I wanna hand some stuff out, I hope it's all right.
So I need to be, may I be excused, I gotta go close the store, finish the store. Thank you. Thanks for hearing me.
I didn't practice this part.
Is this different from what's in the packet, Lance?
There's a little bit of additional information. If I can just, figure it out. You got 2 plats there.
Thank you, Lynn. Yeah, a bunch of them.
Hey, I didn't read this way.
He's good on the team, so I'll give him that.
Yeah, thanks, sir. All right, so
Make sure you give one to Lindsay.
Thank you.
She has that.
Oh, yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. I'm all right past you. Thank you. So this is 111 30th Street. This is something that has been presented before, but there was a valid, issue with a couple things. When I say valid issue, most of it was the easement, the access easement to the interior lot. And it was proposed initially as 10 feet, like the ones that were approved on 33rd Street, I think it was, and the Corey lot, and that is not very accessible. So what the owner wanted to do was take this and make this easement from the outside lot to the inside lot as 18 feet. But just an overall view of what's going on here, the lot is proposed to be split in approximately 50-foot lots, but more so to allow for 2 33-foot wide houses, single-family houses. And all the setbacks are met, front, back, rear, or front, back, and both sides setbacks, 7.5-foot sides, 10-foot corner setback off of the roadway. and, impervious areas met, all, densities met, everything to do with the Mexico Beach Land Development, code is met. Like I said, the proposed access easement has been increased to 18 feet wide, gravel. They are proposing, of course, this is later down the road for the Belmore type stuff, but what they're doing is proposing to have a concrete entrance, to the roadway. The plat is behind it. The other, so there's a third plan on there. That's not anything that's being proposed. All that is I just wanted to give an overview of the idea of what is being proposed because of a concern last time. The concern last time, another concern was the crowding the beach and crowding the views from the landward side of this parcel. And so what is being proposed as two 33-foot wide houses, fairly typical along this area, 30 to 33 is fairly typical. That kind of fits in with surrounding areas, as far as structure sizes. The third attachment that I put on there, the third plan, that is not what's being proposed. That is what could be built without council approval and not what they're wanting to build, but just to give you an idea of this, approving this lot split actually reduces it gives the opportunity to reduce the overall footprint and intensity size-wise crowding of the beaches, which was a concern, last time this was presented in a different way. That's just showing that you could have approximately an 81.3 foot wide by 72 foot deep monstrous duplex structure. So that don't require any council approval. That's just under the land development code as it sits. That's not what's proposed. That's just what this lot could have. But this lot split would limit it to these two 33-foot wide structures.
And what size are the surrounding lots?
They are, well, up and down the beach there are lots this size, and there are lots as the same size as the parent parcel. There's other lots that have been split into 50-foot, approximately 50-foot lots, and then there's lots that have not been split in this manner, and they're the same, 100-foot, essentially 100-foot lot lots.
Okay, from 26 to 36, they're the same as that currently exist here. But east of 25th, they're half the size of what they're proposing.
But from 26 to 36,
They're,
6 blocks either way, it's,
exactly the way the lot is now. When you go further east, then the lots get smaller.
what, before the storm, was it previously a single family home on this piece of property?
There was nothing on the property.
Okay.
And 33rd Street, 3 streets to the east, was done exactly, well, not exactly like this. It had a 10-foot access easement, whereas this one's proposed at 18.
Why do they want to split?
Just to build two residences instead of one. Well, they're gonna build two, I'll take that back. They're gonna build two either way. They don't wanna build that connected duplex. That would be their only other option, is to build a duplex. And they don't want to do
Okay.
that. And that duplex is, that's that big.
Yeah,
Of course, it doesn't have to be as big as it can, is that monstrous footprint to get what they're after with a shared property, with a shared wall. Would be that big footprint on the back end there.
Okay, there's currently 3 owners, okay?
Yes,
This
sir.
just went through probate. So the husband and wife, are they gonna own one of the lots, and then the third party, which owns 50%,
They
own
will
the other
all-
lot?
it'll
Or
be-
all 3 of them gonna own both lots?
The ownership will be the same.
Okay, and are they gonna live here?
I don't know that. I would doubt they're gonna live in both, but it may be a vacation home for, I don't know how they split it up, but there are 3 owners right now, and their family.
And the 3 people own both lots rather than splitting the lots.
Right, that's the intent, right, that's if this were to be approved, that's what would, they would both own both lots. Yes, sir. Or all three of them would own both lots.
Are they wanting to split it to sell part of it, build and sell, or are they just wanting to split it to use it?
I don't know that far into, I would assume we would have to assume they can either live in it, rent it, or sell it.
What would be the advantage? So this would be advantage, they could sell it within the.
Right, and the advantage to this point,
Disadvantage, they have to sell the whole thing, because they couldn't sell.
Yeah, just build it. You could build it.
oh yeah, if they sold it as it is right now, they have to sell the entire parcel.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So the adjacent lots immediately on either side are how
They're the size of the one.
they
that-
should be 100 feet, the size of the parent parcel, let me look and make sure.
Okay.
Yeah, there is, and then on the next, well, to the road to the west, there is smaller, but to the east, there is, that same lot on 31st Street
Look at this page here.
is
Yeah.
split, but it's split perpendicular to what this proposed.
So it's a combination of,
That one on 31st Street is split into smaller lots, but it's perpendicular, their shoreline parallel as opposed to perpendicular.
Well, their larger alternate, the one you said that they don't want to proceed with, is actually more consistent with the homes up and down the beach. It's not unusual for there to be very large homes, beachfront, 100 by 100 foot lots, right? That the neighbors and others have
Right.
big, single-family homes, and I think that's the pattern that exists right there, rather than taking one of these and splitting and putting two homes there.
Right, and the only reason I included that, and that is, yeah, there's large homes being built on those parcels. The only reason I included this is because of the concern, one of the major concerns of denying it last time, even though it met all the land development code requirements, was that it was crowding the beach and it was too big, and it didn't have enough view. That was just the concern, so that's the only reason I wanted to bring that up.
What would be the difference in a 10-foot approval versus 18 getting approved versus a 10-foot easement?
Accessing and turning into, the parking under the houses, and as has been mentioned very much recently, and a very good point is, room for boats, and backing boats in, and also what you'll see here too, of course, it's in the development order, but to further add that, ability to back something in, or, swing a larger truck, an F-250, for example, would be to drop those pilings back off of that driveway 6 or 8 feet and cantilever those girders, so you have room. So you have 18 feet plus where, how far you can go back to those pilings.
That's a convenience for the owners, not having anything to do with the city.
Yes, ma'am, convenience for the homeowners to be able to have a boat and not, the idea is that even though it's only required 2 parking spaces per house, per residence, the idea is to do everything you can to keep those guys from parking on the street.
And that is where it helps the city is,
Yeah.
if they have sufficient parking on site, they won't crowd the streets.
is there anybody else? If you give us a minute, Lance, thanks. Anybody else want to speak to this in the audience? Okay.
Okay, let me present the arguments of what we've got in the packet here, that the people that are against it. First one's from Lisa Logan. She basically says it will diminish the property values of all the remaining large Gulf Street lots. And again, we're talking about, this property is located right in the middle of the 10-block area where all the lots are approximately the same size as the lot they want to split. You go west of that, you go east of that, the lots get smaller. Basically, she says it appears the main reason the property owners want to split the lot is to be able to sell off the second lot. That only benefits the property owners and not the city. Okay, that's her. Mr. Miller is concerned about parking spillover, but I think that the 18-foot easement, at least in my opinion, solves that problem. So the easement is where the parking will take place and won't be out there. Now, Mr. Miller states that he knows, apparently, the owners, and the intention of the petitioner is to simply maximize the value of the property, which I understand the petitioner intends to sell rather than to build on, which will damage the value of his property and damage that area of the community at large.
Increase value or decrease value.
I'm not saying one way or the other, I'm just saying this is what they're saying. Okay, and this is Nick and Ian Bart. And they're basically saying there's not enough off-street parking for two houses. Again, I think that 18-foot easement solves that. But they say it's incompatible with all the beachfront lots in the vicinity. All the rest would be larger. And allowing this would set a precedent for other beachfront lot owners to subdivide their lots. And then the last one is from Mr. Kemple. And his concern is parking, and I guess, at least in my opinion, that's solved by the 18-foot easement. I would like to point out, though, that we have denied a lot split in the same area before, and that was based on the city's intent that Mexico Beach retain basically the same structure that it had before the hurricane, with large houses in one area and the other areas not quite as large. So that's kind of basically the opposition, what the opposition that I've seen has to say about it.
I think the 18 feet parking easement is easier to back into than 10. But I'm mediocre at backing a boat at best. And I think whoever rents that other property is more likely to put their boat and their truck along the side of the street rather than threading that needle.
I don't think it would solve it 100%.
Okay. Lance, anything you want to add before we? Okay. All right. I voted for the lot split with the traffic issue, understanding that an owner has property rights, certain property rights, I feel, and they met all the requirements. However, since then, I've realized that there are big lots in that area, and I think it's not the right thing to do personally, to start chopping these big ones up into smaller ones and set the precedent, particularly if you're right in the area of all large lots on either side. Recognizing still that they can build a monstrosity duplex and do it that way, but at least it's a contiguous piece of property. So that's my thoughts.
And I concur, for the same reason I voted to deny the last one. I think you've got an area here, the contiguous lots aren't that size. I just think in order to retain the structure that we've got in Mexico Beach prior to the storm, that I would recommend we deny.
Agreed.
And I read this before coming, and, I was like, well, I think it's okay, I could split this based on everything I was reading, but after hearing everything, I'm in the opinion too that it should stay the same.
I would say, when I first read it, I kind of got the impression that they were gonna, well, the reason I asked Lance, the couple would own one, the 50% guy would own the other, and they were gonna build, and they'd each have their own parcel. But since that, it's, man.
All right, so do we have a motion?
I recommend that we, recommend the, council disapprove the lot split for the reason that, it's out of touch with the contiguous lots in the area, or that it's not in
Consistent.
keeping with the size of the lots contiguous to the area.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Mr. Driver?
Yes.
Ms. Lindsay?
Yes.
Mr. Carrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Okay. And Lance, as you well know, we're only recommending council makes final decision. So I'm sure you'll be at that meeting. Okay, do we have any miscellaneous?
We still got the minutes.
Okay, I still haven't read them, so I have to get it at the next meeting.
I have two miscellaneous quickly. I did ask questions on what are the requirements for cleaning up derelict structures? What's the timeline on that? I can send the building department, but I'd rather, since you're busy already, can someone educate me on that?
Something here, that's fine.
We're trying to get things cleaned up as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, there are pieces and parcels that are stuck in probate, there are pieces and parcels that are stuck in insurance, so each individual parcel is complicated in its own right, which is why Kathy has a spreadsheet that tracks all the lots, not all the lots, but most all the lots. And to give you some ideas, there might be a parcel that looks awful, but it's owned by a family and the family can't agree what to do with, and the insurance isn't coming through, and they're between a rock and a hard spot. So on that spreadsheet, what she has is caught in probate, and when you're caught in probate, we can find things, but it's not gonna expedite anything, so.
So that's, my question wasn't what are the variety of situations, is there a deadline, and that's what I'm being asked. It sounds like no.
We're pushing the rope as hard as we can.
Yeah, I remember looking at that spreadsheet, Jack, and if I remember correctly, more than half of them, they were still arguing with the insurance companies. And I think there were already 9 lawsuits in court scheduled for a date. So, for the most part, I mean, there are other reasons, but for the most part, it's the insurance companies
Yeah.
really lowball.
I'm never that way, and I'm sympathetic, but I just get asked, and I'd rather be able to answer the question than say, go up here and stand in line.
But there has been a lot of progress. I will say in the last 8 or 9 months since Kathy has been on board, and she's been able to get to each individual group and send letters to
The other
and make
miscellaneous
contact.
is the crosswalk here at 21st Street. There's a painted crosswalk on the highway, but no signs. And I've observed near tragedies where one truck comes to a screeching halt and a mother and kids. I live and I access the beach there every other day. And it's an accident waiting to happen without signage.
Yeah, and I'll get Tommy to check with FDOT's. It's a DOT road, they're the ones that initiate those.
That's it for me.
Okay, and I have one issue, and that's, what's the status of amending the purpose and intent of the comp plan?
What was it, the purpose and intent?
Intent of the comp plan, you know, that piece of paper that was missing last week, and you asked for a copy of the draft, and it was sent to you?
It's basically the first page of the comp plan, I think.
And there was a lot of disagreement the last time we talked about it, whether it was approved or approved or disapproved or argued about. And I don't have any records of it, so if
That's what I'm
somebody.
saying, he sent it to you.
Okay, I was on vacation for 2 weeks, I
Okay.
have about 5,000 emails, so if you sent it to
Right.
me, please forgive me.
Okay, well, I think what we're down to is, there was a version which the group at that time went through, we had the public meetings, the public gave us input, had some good attendance at some of those meetings, and we had laid that out. When the plan was redone, a lot of those changed, and we have a new front page now. I think where Jim is which plan are we using? The one that went to the state the second time and was approved, which changed some of the things that the citizens had input to the first one. So that's, I think, the toss-up, you might say, on where we are. And,
If you're looking for a record of the city council approving it, of what I have for them, you won't find it, because I could not get on the agenda because it was too early, so they put me under citizens' comments. And then I presented that first page to them, and said, if I can get your approval, this is what we will base the rest of the comp plan on. And then we went forward with that all the way until the final draft went in, and we were never allowed to review the final draft so we could catch it. And then we were allowed to review it when it came back, and it wasn't what we intended it to be.
Is it
But
first page of
the
the entire
council,
plan or
the
two
council approved what went to the state, but we weren't able to review it before the council approved it, or we would have caught it. So the council approved what the state approved, but it was the wrong first page.
So the question is, do we go back and change the first page, or blend the two, or leave it as it lies? And that's,
I think in order to create the record, you guys would need to propose to make the change, make that proposal, get it to the council get it to the state. I mean, it's not easy to change the comp plan. But I don't see how I can create a record and get it approved without it going through you to get to the council to then go to the state.
So what you're telling us is we make the recommendation, and I come in and brief the council, it's they can make a decision based on the.
That's the process.
So, the important factor is if it didn't get state review before, it would need state review now to be included in the comprehensive plan.
Yes.
So, we would just initiate a new text amendment that you're recommending that language be added, and the council would, it would have a first hearing at the council level, then it would go to the state, and the council would adopt it, if they're inclined to adopt it. I don't know if they made a purposeful choice, or if this was an accident.
I'm sure it was an accident, because although Laura says she doesn't remember, she agreed when it first came up, right after the thing was approved and right after it went forward, so.
we thought initially we were told that the page was left out. The first page, which states the intent and the purpose of the comprehensive.
Yeah, we're only talking 2 lines, read it to them.
Sure.
The City of Mexico Beach's objective is to manage growth so as to, 1, retain the family-oriented quality of life, small town values that have been its tradition, and 2, encourage economically beneficial growth and affordable housing that is consistent with the traditional small town housing. So that's it. What the purpose now states is, this is a document that all this goes by and all that other stuff. Doesn't say anything about what we want to be. And the intent for putting that, this is what we want the town to be.
So they looked at the purpose.
They looked at the generic purpose of the document rather than what we want the town to be.
If we're gonna do that, can we change the zoning map at the same time?
It's a different issue. They're talking about language of the comprehensive plan. The zoning map is a document under the land development code.
It's in the, is it in comp plan also?
The future land use zoning map is in the comp plan.
But not
It's that
the zoning
distinction
map.
between future land use categories and zoning, and how they're mostly the same.
So the zoning map is only in the LBR.
I think so.
So, do you remember that, working on that?
I do.
Okay, so the 3 of us that were here, remember that's what was approved. So if we can just say, you know, I can come up and we recommend that approval of the council, I'll go before the 22nd, on the 22nd, so you out.
So your thought process is to add purpose to the language?
To remove the current purpose and replace it with that. Because that's the way the document read initially.
Right.
I mean, obviously, everybody knows what the purpose of the comp plan is. I mean, you don't have to spell that out. But nobody knows what the town is supposed to look like. That's why that's important.
Okay. Jeff, any comments?
No, I agree with that.
Okay. So,
I'd like to get it corrected.
So the way that would work, Mr. Bush could come speak, council nods along, says, yes, that sounds good, then we prepare the actual amendment. Unfortunately, you, by statute, have to have a hearing on your own recommendation, but there's path forward to do it.
Yeah. So they just come in briefly, this is what we'd like to do, if I get their blessing, we do it, if not, then it drops.
Okay, sounds fine to me.
So can you get me on the agenda for the 22nd, please?
Okay, anything else? Good meeting, thanks for coming. We have a motion to
Motion to
adjourn.
adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thanks for coming, Nick.
Thank you.
We needed you.
That was just given to you like 6 weeks ago.
Did you email me that?
Yeah, I emailed you this page